The ark that held the Ten Commandments was in the midst of the tabernacle. And so through it, God represented himself among his people, and his glory was manifest there. And so laws concerning the tabernacle and worship thereat and its transportation are provided for us in chapters 7 to 9. With chapter 10, we actually have the story of the departure from Mount Sinai. The Israelites are on the road. Now, they'll be on the road, unfortunately, for 39 years. They don't know that yet. As far as they know, they're going to head straight for the Promised Land and enter into the land of Canaan and begin their conquest of that land under God's good grace. And it could have been that way, but unfortunately, as the book goes on to describe, the people sinned against God. And so, if we think of chapters 1 through 10 as kind of a first third of the book, an opening chunk, part 1, let's say, we can think then of the chapters that begin with 11 and end with 25, that block of material, as kind of a middle section. So we'll call chapters 11 to 25 part 2 of the book of Numbers. This is the section of the book where we read about those long years of wandering in the wilderness. What happened? Why were the Israelites stuck in the huge Sinai Peninsula, going around from place to place, not making it into the Promised Land? Well, what happened was two kinds of things that indicated lack of faith. One was regular and constant grumbling. We read in chapters 11 and 12 how the people complain about their food. They didn't like the food that they were getting. They didn't like the fact that God provided for them daily the same good, nutritious stuff that we call manna. And so they began to complain about it. Imagine people given everything they actually need, but wanting more. It's not really hard to imagine at all, is it? Because it's what we do. It's natural to human nature. But in those same chapters, there's also an interesting account of how Aaron and Miriam complain about Moses. Now, Aaron is Moses' older brother, and Miriam is his older sister. They were with him. They helped him. They supported him all through these events of the trials in Egypt and the exodus from Egypt and the year spent at Mount Sinai and so on. But people can get tired of what they're used to. They can become dissatisfied with circumstances that don't move as quickly as they want them to a given end. And they can single out somebody and begin to complain about some aspect of his leadership or character, or in this case, his family. We read that Moses had married a Cushite woman. The Cushites in the Old Testament were from the area of Africa that we call the Sudan. In other words, Moses had married a black woman, a woman who was not exactly of his race. And it may well be that Aaron and Miriam were not usually racist in their thinking, but in this instance, they adopted a racist posture and complained about that woman. Now, God took care of the situation. It was an affront to Moses' leadership, and it was an attack on a black woman. And he turned Aaron and Miriam white with leprosy. That was certainly an appropriate and legitimate kind of punishment for them to receive. Shocked, corrected, they appealed to God for mercy, and he did indeed heal them of that. And there was no more talk of criticism of Moses' Cushite wife. But it is characteristic of what's going on among the people. They left Egypt, were glad to get out, wanted to be heading for the promised land, but as they encountered difficulties, as they encountered just the time involved, as they encountered the trials of traveling, they began to grumble.